Substage 1 Simple reflexes. Birth to 1 month. Coordination of sensation and action through reflexive behaviors. Three primary reflexes are described by PJ. These are sucking of objects in the mouth, first habits and primary circular reaction 1 to 4 months. It involves coordinating sensation and a new schemas. In the first few months of life, infants' behavior are focused almost exclusively on their own bodies. In PJ's terminology, the behaviors are primary and repeated over and over again. They are circular. Infants also begin to refine their reflexes and combine them into more complex actions. For example, a child may touch his or her thumb by accident and then later intentionally repeated the action. These actions are repeated because the infant finds them pleasurable. Secondary circular reaction 4 to 8 months. In this stage, the infants become more subject-oriented, moving beyond self-preoccupation, repeat action that bring interesting or pleasurable results. This stage is associated primarily with the development of coordination between vision and prehension. Three new abilities occur at this stage: intentional grasping for a desired object, secondary circular reaction, and differentiation between ends and means. This age, infants will intentionally grasp the air in the direction of a desired object, often the amusement of friends and family. Secondary circular reaction, or the repetition of an object involving an external object begin. For example, moving a switch to turn on a light repeatedly. This means that a secondary action is focused of an object outside the body of an infant. The differentiation between means and ends also occurs. This is perhaps one of the most important stages of a child's growth as it signifies the dawn of logic. Coordination of reaction stage secondary circular 8 to 12 months. Coordination of vision and touch hand-eye coordination of schemes intentionally. This stage is associated primarily with the development of logic and coordination between means and ends. This is an extremely important stage of development, holding what PJ calls the first proper intelligence. Also, this stage marks the beginning of goal orientation, the deliberate planning of steps to meet an objective. The action is directed towards a goal. Tertiary circular reaction, novelty and curiosity 12 to 18 months. Infants become intrigued by the many properties of objects and by the many things they can make happen to objects. They experiment with the new behavior. This stage is associated primarily with the discovery of new means to meet goals. PJs describe the child at this juncture as the young scientist conducting side-do experiment to discover new methods of meeting challenges. By the end of the sensory motor period, objects are both separated from the self and permanent. Object permanence is the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen. Internalization of schemes, invention of new means through mental combination, 18 to 24 months. Infants develop the ability to use primitive symbols and form enduring mental representations. This stage is associated primarily with the beginnings of insight or true creativity. This marks the passage into pre-operational stage, evidence of an internal representational system, symbolizing the problem-solving sequence before actually responding. Sensory motor stage. The 6 sub-stages of the sensory motor shows the development begin from reflexive behaviors to more refined and more coordinate activities. Cognitive development of infants involves in orientation from becoming focused on themselves to becoming objects or world-oriented, from one that is action-based to one that is mentally based, from one that does not involve much of coordination of schemes to one involving intentionally novelty and curiosity, and from a thinking that is purely sensory motor. These sub-stages are termed circular because the adaptive behavior to the world involves repeated action. Circular reactions are attempts to repeat an events that the baby likes. Primary circular reactions are oriented toward the infant's own body, whereas secondary circular reactions are aimed toward the environment including others. Here is an example of primary circular reaction. At first, by accident, the baby gets her thumb in her mouth, but she doesn't know how to do it again. She waves her hand around and, after many attempts, eventually succeeds in doing it again. Gradually, he learns how to do it well. Secondary circular reactions are repetitive actions that involve recreating events which 4 to 10-month-old babies observe outside of their own bodies, such as making their mobile crib shake by kicking their legs. Tertiary circular reaction, seen from approximately 10 to 18 months, is when a baby does things over and over again, just a little differently each time. When a baby seems to enjoy dropping the spoon over and over again in many different ways, a proof of the creation of novel variation in events. Vijay described that the baby at this stage as the science, acquiring the sense of object permanence, is one of the infant's most important accomplishments according to Vijay's. Object permanence is the understanding that objects are not immediately perceptible through the senses. These are some criticisms of Vijay's theory on cognitive development. One criticism from other developmental theorists is his fundamental assumption that cognitive development occurs in a fixed sequence of discontinuous spurts across task domains, task and context. Many theorists, example, Brainerd 1978, believe that cognitive development occurs as a continuous process rather than in discontinuous stage of development. Recent studies in the cognitive development of infants support the view that Vijay's underestimate young infants' cognitive ability. Furthermore, Vijay's methods of research were said to be quite loose. The facts that he simply observed his 3 children and a few others, which were limited only to European children. Learning and remembering. Do infants learn and remember? Yes. Pavlov's classical conditioning and Skinner's operant conditioning have been proven to apply to infants. All of us experience infantile amnesia, the inability to recall events that happened when we were very young. Spear 1979. Generally, we can remember little or nothing that has happened to us before the age of about 5 years, and it is extremely rare for someone to recall many memories before 3 years. Reports of childhood memories usually involve memories of significant events. Example, birth of a sibling or the death of a parent. Phoebus and Hammond, 1991. For example, some adults have recalled their own hospitalization or the birth of a sibling as far as age 2 years, and the death of a parent or a family move may be recalled from as far back as age 3 year. Language development. From day 1, infants appear to be programmed into their linguistic environment with the specific goal of acquiring language. Infants clearly have remarkably acute language learning abilities even from an early age. Marcus Behind, Bandy Rao, and Bishton, 1999, Pinker, 1997-1999. Cited by Sternberg, Robert, 2003. Within the first years of life, we humans seem to progress through the following stages in producing language. Sternberg, 2003. Cooing, which comprises consonant as well as vowel sounds. Bubbling, which comprises consonant as well as a vowel sound. To most people's ear, the bubbling of infants growing up among speakers from different language groups sounds very similar. Utterances. These utterances are limited in both the vowels and the consonants by utilize Ingram, 1999, cite by Sternberg, 2003. Two-word utterances and telegraphic speech. Basic adult sentence structure present by about age 4 years with continuing vocabulary acquisition. The infant utters his or her word followed by one or two more, and soon after yet a few more. The infant uses these one-word utterances termed hollow phrases to convey intention, desire, and demands. Usually, the words are nouns describing familiar objects that the child observes. Example, book, ball, and baby. Or one's example, mama, dada. Age. Children typically have vocabularies of 3 to 100 words. Ziegler, 1986. Because of young child's vocabulary is very limited at this point in the developmental process, the child overextends the meaning of word in his or her existing lexicon to cover things and ideas for which a new word is lacking. For example, the general term for any kind of four-legged animal may be doggy. In linguistics, this is called overextension error. Gradually, between 1.5 and 2.5 years of age, children start combining single words to produce two-word utterances. These two-word or three-word utterances with rudimentary syntax but with articles and prepositions missing are referred to as telegraphic speech. Language Acquisition Device or LAD. Noam Chomsky, 1965-1972, noted linguist claims that humans have an innate language acquisition device. This LAD is metaphorical organ that is responsible for language learning. Just as a heart is designed to pump blood, this language acquisition device is pre-programmed to learn language. Whatever the language community children find themselves in, this means that we humans seem to be biologically pre-configured to be ready to acquire knowledge. Indeed, children seem to have a knack for acquiring an implicit understanding of the many rules of language structure, as well as for applying those rules to new vocabulary and new context. Professor Laura Ann Petito of Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, and her colleagues conducted a recent study that concluded that by 5 months of age, babies are already specializing by using the left side of her brains for language sounds and the right side for expressions emotion. We all speak out from the right side of our mouths. Babies bubbles out from the right side of their mouths. The right side of the body is controlled by the side left of the brain, while the left side of the body is controlled by the right side of the brain. Connection in the brain are contralateral or cross. Babies use the right side of their mouths for babbling, and then babbling is the language function controlled by the left side of the brain. What infants and toddlers can do cognitively. Domain: language, pre-reading and pre-math. Language, receptive language. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age 0 to 6 months? Watches primary caregiver intently as he speaks to he or her 7 to 12 months. Understands no. Point to family member when asked to do so 13 to 18 months. Point to 5 body parts on him or herself when asked to do so. Follow one-step instructions without need or for gestures 19 to 24 months. Points 5 name pictures objects when asked to do so. Language, expressive language. Standard 1. The child is able to use words and gestures to express his thoughts and feelings. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on a specified age 0 to 6 months? Makes, gargling, cooing, bubbling, or other vocal sounds. Uses gestures. Example, stretching his arm, pointing, to indicate what he or she wants. 7 to 12 months. Repeats sounds produced by others. Say meaningful words like papa, mama to refer to specified person. Uses animal sound to identify animals. Example, meow, meow for cat. Uses environmental sound to identify objects, events in the environment. Example, boom for thunder. Months. Speak in single words. Say yes and no appropriately. Uses words accompanied by gesture to indicate what he or she wants. Respond to simple questions with single words. 19 to 24 months. Uses pronouns. Uses possessive pronouns. Say what he or she wants without accompanying this with gestures. Attempts to converse even if he cannot be clearly understood. Pre-reading and pre-matching. Standards 1.1. The child is able to match identical objects, colors, shapes, and symbols. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age 7 to 12 months, able to match two identical objects? Example, 2 spoons, 2 balls. 19 to 24 months, matches identical objects. Matches identical pictures. Pre-reading and pre-math rote sequencing. Standards 1.2. The child is able to recite the alphabet and numbers in sequence. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age 19 to 24 months? Counts 1 to 5 with errors, gaps, and prompts. Domain, cognitive development. Attention and activity level. Standards 1. The child is able to sustain attention and modulate his activity at age expected levels. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age 0 to 6 months? Looks steadily and novel stimuli. Example, rattle, Dangling toy. 7 to 12 months. Examines properties of toys for several minutes by handling this. Example, falling apart. Look with interest at pictures books. Able to sit through an entire meal without fussing. 13 to 18 months. May be distracted but responds when made to refocus. Resists interruption while engaged in play. The ordered mental abilities. Concept formation. Standards 1. The child develops basic concept pertaining to object, constancy, space, time, quantity, seriation, etc., and uses this as the basis for understanding how materials are categorized in his or her environment. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on specified age 0 to 6 months? Experiments with new objects or toy, banging or putting them into his mouth. Look in the direction of a fallen object. 7 to 12 months. Look for particular hidden object. Look for completely hidden objects. 13 to 18 months. Can tell whether something is hot or cold. Hands over one object when asked. 19 to 24 months. Can tell which is shorter of two items. Can tell which is taller or longer of two items. Can tell which is bigger of two items. Can tell which is nearer of two items. Higher ordered mental abilities. Cause-effect relationships. Standards 1. The child is able to understand the cause-effect relationships. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on a specified age 0 to 6 months? Acts as an object to achieve an objective. Example, shakes rattle. 7 to 12 months. Uses an object to get something she or she wants. Example, spoon to reach an object. Asks why questions. Understand reason behind daily practices. Example, washing hands before meals. Understand reason behind safety rules and practices at home. Example, why one must not play matches. Knows where to return most of his or her things. Memory. Memory for experiences, episodic memory. Standards 1. The child is able to recall people he has met, events and places he has been to. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child who specified age 0 to 6 months? Child reacts like smiling in recognition of someone he or she has met several times but who does not live in his or her home. 13 to 18 months. Child reacts like smiling in recognition of familiar places besides his or her home. 19 to 24 months. Child is brought somewhere and correctly recall having been there before. Memory for concept-based knowledge, semantic memory. Standards 1. The child is able to store verbal information in short and long-term memory. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specific age 19 to 24 months? Hums or recognizable tone. Memory, some gesture of action songs. Higher ordered mental abilities. Logical reasoning. Standard 1. The child is able to follow the logic of events, reasons why this happened, and draw accurate conclusions by evaluating the facts and presented to him. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age Higher ordered mental abilities, planning and organizing. Standards 1. The child is able to plan and organize simple familiar activities. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age? Higher ordered mental abilities, creative thought. Standard 1. The child is able to generate new ideas or concepts or new association between existing ideas or concepts. Based on your experience, are these indicators generally observed on and or performed by a child on the specified age? 19 to 24 months. Enjoy constructing objects or structures out of manipulate toys, blocks, clay, sandpaper. Use toys or objects as symbol in play. Pretends empty milk can is a drum. Can use the same toy or object in more than one way. Big empty toy as a house.